All right, guys. So I figured I am actually going to shoot this podcast. Honestly, I didn't know this many people were interested in Ironman and what things went on. I'm going to hold my microphone because the table's not high enough, and we're in our podcast studio for the first time ever. This is the Crypto Boys podcast studio, not just my own, but we're going to use it for the Ironman podcast studio. And I do want to start this video series. I think there's going to be a total of 5 videos. I'll go over that here in a second. I'm going to give a little background as to what went on and how I'm going to start it and all that stuff. And I want to let you guys know this is my experience. Every single person you talk to is probably going to have a different experience. But I feel like from my experiences and the things I did, I have a lot to share with especially people who are new, who want to get into it, and everybody can do an Ironman. I'm not kidding you, most everybody, but for the most part, I really believe everybody can do an Ironman. I think there's some dedication and some things that you'll have to jump to get through it, but and some perseverance, no doubt. But everybody can do one. It's not like we're some, like some crazy anomaly. No, everybody can do one, and we're gonna go over that as we go on. But I want you guys just to know, my experience with it. This is only my thoughts. This is no one else's. I'm not speaking for anybody. I don't want you guys to think that you're going to have the exact same experience as me, but I do want to help you guys that maybe have wondered in what it's like to actually do an Ironman and the things and the trials and tribulations that actually go into it. I'm going to detail it as best I can into 5 episodes, probably about 30 to 40 minutes each. On the 5th episode, I'm going to bring in our crew, Danny, Chris, and Gary, and they're going to do it with me too. Chris is gone for a week after crazy, months of training. Gary's gone for a week, and then Danny leaves on vacation. So when we can get all 4 of us together and get us all in the podcast as one, that's when you're going to see the 5th episode. But the first 4 are just going to be me and my experiences, and I do want to get them out as quickly as possible. This is 2 days after the Ironman, but today we're going to focus on something a little bit different. This is going to be the first episode of 4, obviously by myself, and then that 5th one going to be with the other guys. So we're just basically going to get right into it, have a more of a conversation, and yeah, we're going to roll, okay? So the first thing I want to go over is kind of our basic topics, the basic sprinkle of everything over an Ironman. I'm going to start with the most difficult thing for me in particular is that everybody told me there's not a good time to do an Ironman. There's no good time. There's no right time. It's always going to be difficult, and they were 100% right. They were also somewhat wrong. It's because there may not be a good time, because you do have to miss things. You do have to change your lifestyle, which I didn't do enough of, but you do have to change, and you do have to be gone for weekends on end, and you cannot skip workouts because that will add up in the end, which again I'll get into later. I'm going to be saying that a lot, just to let you know, because other subsequent videos will cover more in depth the details that I have about things. But just to kind of sprinkle the top here, there are bad times to do an Ironman. I picked a bad time. I'm not going to lie to you. I picked a bad time in my life. The month we signed up for it was the month I moved out of my house, sold our house, moved into my mom's house. So the whole family and everything. Jesse's 8 or 9 or however many months pregnant, 7 months pregnant at this point in time. So really when training started to heating up, I had a baby. We're living in my mom's house, building our house across the way. Business isn't doing well because Corona's hitting again, right? So we've got a lot of things that we're just juggling at once. We start up the Crypto Boys, starts getting a little bit hot, so we've got to put more time into that. And there were a lot of things going on that it was probably too much to do at that point in time. I put a lot of strain and excess, stress on my wife and really my family to help out. Without her allowing me to do this, it's impossible. So that's going to be point number 1 for me is don't worry for a good time, but don't pick a bad time, because there are bad times to do it. This was just too much for me to handle. I'm going to be right up front with you right now. I wasn't as focused as I should have been. Honestly, I didn't even really care about it for the first 4.5 months. I just pretty much just CrossFitted with a little biking here and there. I didn't even buy my bike till November or whatever that was. Yeah, November I want to say is when I got it, or it was late October. So it was too much juggling, and I probably put too much stress on everybody doing it that way. But it is what it is. I chose to do it, got it done, obviously, and I still think my first thing I would give you advice-wise is don't worry about a good time, but don't pick a bad time either. Okay, that's number one. It puts a lot of stress on the family. We're going to get more into that in a later video as well. Number two is the time. The time. These are just numbers just to keep them, in an order. They're not necessarily in an order. That'll be that I'll order them better off later on. But the time. The time is huge, and especially depending on where you're starting from, it could be very massive. I'm starting from a place where I think I was pretty dang fit, like really dang fit, to be honest with you. Running is one of my best things. I have never biked in my life. I BMX biked when I for 1 year in 8th grade, and I have not sat on a bike to actually bike since 5th grade. I only did four rides before the Ironman. Yes, 4 times on my bike. I'll explain that as to what happened there as well, because it should have been more like 8, maybe even 10, but it ended up being 4. And my 5th ride ever was on was the Ironman. So my first ride ever was a 112-mile bike ride. No, actually that was my second ride. First ride was 31 miles with Danny. We went in Illinois, Port Byron area, went up and down, whatever. It was a good ride. The second ride was 2 weeks later, which was because it rained. Our springtime here in Iowa was horrendous. Everybody knows it was bad. I'm not blaming the weather. I'm not crying about it. No. Not at all. It was just a bad weather for bike riding. It freaking rained every day, or it snowed. It rained or snowed every day up until probably late May. So you really had to pick and choose what was going on. Okay, so that was my second. My second ride was a full Ironman, 112 miles. Third ride was 26 miles on the bike path. Fourth ride was I did 61 miles on the bike path by myself, and the other 4 times my bike broke, or I should say I broke my bike in some way. First time got a flat tire with I was on a 56-mile ride. On my third ride, got a flat tire and didn't have anything to fix it, didn't even know how to fix it. Jesse had to come pick me up. Second ride ever, my back wheel was put in incorrectly, and we couldn't figure out how to fix it, and it was 5:10 in the morning, and the guys needed to go ride, so I just dropped my bike, didn't even get on it, didn't even ride it, put it back in my car, and just ran 17 miles for that day. The third ride, I messed up my gears. It bent a chrome piece on my bike, which is completely aesthetic, has nothing to do with anything, and it was an easy fix. I just didn't know how to fix it. I was on the top of a hill in Emi's Park, so I had to walk my bike 4.5 miles back from Emi's Park. Yes, I had to walk my bike back. That was rather embarrassing. And then the fourth time I screwed up my bike. I don't know what. Oh, the handlebar. The shifter wouldn't shift. I don't know why, but I think it was just because the battery wasn't charged from the 112-mile bike ride I did. So, yeah. So 4 of the 8 times I was unsuccessful at riding my bike how I should have ridden it. So 4 successful rides and then the Ironman, which honestly I don't really think it mattered. I caught on to biking pretty easy. It's a bike, dude. It really wasn't that difficult. But the timing of it all was not great. So you have got to be able to figure out where you're going with your timing. Where do you want your time to be? How much are you willing to allocate? And how much are you willing to allocate on the weekends? Because another thing that I screwed up was that I didn't spend enough time doing the long stuff. Because of all of these weekends I already had planned of stuff I wanted to do, I was unwilling to skip. So I was still drinking and having fun and partying and living my life really through May. I mean, I didn't stop any of that through May. I went on 2 trips, back-to-back weekends, and did no training on either of those, like literally none. Went to Mexico for 4 days, went to Florida for 5 days, did absolutely no training. It was in March, so I missed 2 big rides then. And then in April, went on another 2 weekends I had to be gone, a couple CrossFit comps, and then I had to be gone for a couple other things, so I missed 2 big rides then. So a lot of that was just my fault and poor planning and not willing to give that up. But you do have to be able to split your time up better than I did, because if you are coming into this unfit, people were dropping like flies in our race. It was the hottest day of really the year. I mean, with exception, but it was about 95 with super humidity, and people were dropping like flies. People that were way fitter than me as far as triathletes go and Ironman goes, that were dropping like flies. I mean, IVs everywhere, ambulances all over the place. So putting in the time for the long workouts is something you have to do. And I'm talking 6, 7, 8, 9 hours plus. I did 0 of those. We did the 112-mile ride, and then the hour run afterwards, and I cramped up on that one too. So to be fair, I don't know, but we also didn't have the nutrition we had then. I didn't have my Camelback, which Danny had his, and we all like, dude, we need to get Camelback. So he was by far the best. That dude, absolute stud, killed us all. All right, next up, and probably most importantly, is the money. I added all of it up last night. It wasn't perfectly added up, but between goo packs, between nutrition, between extra water bottles, between Camelbacks, between I had 5 times I had to get my bike professionally fixed or professionally looked at, which was $129 a piece. That's on top of the $3,700 I paid for the bike, on top of power meters, on top of new wheels, on top of everything you bought. It was just insane. It ended up being just over 13 grand. And that's not including some of the extra things you had to buy, like the hotel rooms in Des Moines, all these extra things you got to buy. But I was over 13 grand on just, the Wahoo kicker, on all these little things add up. And over 6, 7, 8 months, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending a ridiculous amount of money that I had to sell some crypto to even pay for it. And then you're doing a house, and it was bad timing. Like I said, it was not good timing. But in my opinion, you don't have to spend as much as we did, and we were all about the same amount of money spent, but you can't go much under 10 grand. I mean, there's just no way you're going to be able to. You could go super cheap and be like, oh, I'm super cool, I'm going to go cheap as I want, but it's really not going to be the experience you want. I'm telling you that right now. So I would say if you don't have at least 10 grand of funds, you're probably not going to be able to do this, because it's $1,000 to sign up. Alone. And we got lucky that Ironman Des Moines had to change to a full just for 1 year. They're already back to a half next year. The only reason why it worked out is because they had to move Ironman Wisconsin to their old date when they moved it to a new date. So everybody was pissed off. So they had to put a new Ironman in like the last second, which ended up being Ironman Des Moines. And next year it's already going to be a half again. So we had the cheapest possible, unless you lived in Des Moines, you could stay in your house, route to get there, and easiest route to get there, because you got to be there 3 days before or 2 days before at the minimum, and then you got to stay the night of to go get all your stuff. So it's a minimum of 3 nights wherever you stay. And it's probably going to be more, because you're probably going to need a flight. You're probably going to need to transport your bike, which is another $1,000. You're going to need a lot of stuff. There's a lot of transporting and little fees that add up to things. It's not just the first cost. It's the second, third, fourth, and fifth costs that start to add up. And here's one thing about Ironman that I learned, is that there is always another cost. There's always something more you have to buy. It's like, oh, step 1, step 2, I'm done. Oh, thank God. No, step 3 comes, step 4 comes, step 5 comes. There's always another expense every time. And then you start figuring it out. You're like, I'm so far deep into this. What's another $100? What's another $200? What's another $500? Who cares now, right? Camelback for $90. Yep, got to get it. Oh, you need new nutrition. You need 3 bottles of GM1 Sport is what I use. I wish I would have used something a little bit more calorically dense, or just stayed on top of it a little bit more. Those are $50-$60 a pop right there. I probably bought 10 jugs of those. So it adds up quickly. Next up is your research. The research you have to do to even get it done. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go? Some courses are way easier. Some courses, like this course, probably wouldn't have been that difficult of a course. I think the bike was definitely hillier than people thought it was going to be. I'll tell you that right now. The bike was harder than people thought, for sure. It wasn't like the hardest bike in the world, but it wasn't going to be the easiest like people thought. It was hot as hell, and it was a pretty tough course. So you've got to do research on what you even need. Part of the issue that we had, even going way back, what bike do you buy? How do you get size for your bike, which is another expense? How do you even know where to find it? Do you buy new? Do you buy used? What do you buy? How do you get it? How do you get it shipped here? How do you even get your workouts? Who do you find as a coach? Our coach, Paul Koulas, was great for us. He was amazing, which we're going to go over that in a different video. But how do you make all these decisions? What goo packets do you want? How do you know it doesn't upset your stomach? Do you have to take a shit every time right after you get done eating this stuff? How do you know? You have no idea until you try it. That's why I'm saying the research part is almost impossible to do, because you have to get the stuff, and then you have to plan it, and then you have to do it, and then you start your research. But there's research that starts beforehand of when are you going to choose? How far out are you realistic? Realistically, we went about 8 months out. We were about 8 months of training. I was probably more like 6 to 5 of actually quitting CrossFit. I basically CrossFitted through January. Through January, I was pretty much 75% CrossFit, 25% half-ass Ironman training. I'm just being honest. That's what I was, okay? Which I do regret now, but that's what I was. So you've got to figure out, how far realistically are you out on your training? Because you don't want to go out there and bonk and be done. You don't want out there and turn a positive experience, which is an Ironman, which is there's so many wonderful things about it, into a negative experience. Especially for someone who's only doing one like myself, because I'm one and done. I've said it since day one. There's a lot of things I didn't like about it, and I'll go over that in a different video. But you have got to do so much research. It is insane. I mean, what sort of wheels do you want to ride? What sort of handlebars fit you the best? What sort of bikes do you want? Do you have to change your brake pads for the set of wheels you have? This is all stuff I had no idea of. I mean, how do you set up your Wahoo kicker? You have to Bluetooth everything. Everything's Bluetooth. Phone, bike computer. Oh, you got to buy a bike computer now. Bluetooth to your Garmin pedals so you have your power meter, which my power meter didn't even work one time. I never, ever had a power meter. If you ask me, hey, what was the power output on your bike? Colin, I have no idea, because it didn't work. I couldn't set it up. I couldn't figure it out. So I never had a power meter, not once on the bike. The only power meter I had was when I was attached to my Wahoo kicker. Everything else, no power meter. Then you have to figure out, how to actually do this, how to sign up. I mean, who's going to help you with getting all your stuff together? Who's going to be your Sherpa, which is basically your helper of figuring out where you're going to go logistically? Are you going to be able to do it with somebody? Because doing it individualized on your own is very, very difficult. You don't have anything to bounce off of other people. That would be extremely difficult. If you were coming in brand new and you had to figure it out all on your own, you're probably going to need about 2 years of time to really figure it out. Should you do a 70.3 before you go full Ironman? We went full stupid mode. All four of us went from doing zero biking, almost zero running, almost zero, we literally zero swimming. None of us had swam in 5-6 years. I was always a decent swimmer, and they were all okay with it, but we had no swimming at all. And so, do you need an extra little pick-me-up before you go full distance so you just don't fail, get a bad taste in your mouth? Because I wouldn't suggest for a lot of people to just jump into the full. For me personally at the level, if I didn't just do a full, I would never do it again. I would not do a half. I would not do an Olympic. I would not do a half and then another half and then be like, I'm ready for the full. F that. You guys know me. I don't mess with that. I went straight for the full and it's like, I'm going to check the box right now, and then it's good to go. However it is, I'm crossing the finish line. Okay. Research. It's going to take up so much time. So much time. Watching Ironman videos, I could go on and on. You get the point. The research is annoying. It is fun. You will enjoy it, but it also gets to a point where it's a little overwhelming. So I did get overwhelmed in the research part of things. I'll be honest with you. Okay, next up, your nutrition. This is goes hand in hand with the research, but the research will only take you so far. You don't know which gels are going to sit with you badly. You don't know how badly you want to eat Uncrustables until you don't want them anymore because you can't even stand the taste of them. You don't know, which nutrition is going to fit best in your bottles. You don't know if you need a Camelback, how much can it hold, how much heavier does it make you. All that stuff are factors that you should probably go through that we really didn't go through. I think Danny and the other three guys were ahead of me as far as research. They were better than I was at getting ready. A lot of my things came off of, hey, what are you guys doing? Because I haven't researched it, haven't had time to look it up. What are you guys doing? And they were on top of it, a little bit more. I think Danny was probably the most, because he really did enjoy it, and he was the best at it. The dude was a freaking stud. He had everything down. He knew his power. He knew where he needed to be for his nutrition. And, how much do you even need to eat? That's a lot of play. You need to go over the 8-hour mark. You need to work out for 8 hours longer, really, to figure it out. And I know there's probably some Ironman and that know way more than me that I do about the sport. But for me, I didn't put myself in enough situations to go far enough into volume training, into workouts, that I really needed to know how much nutrition I needed. I did not do that enough, and that was ultimately my biggest downfall and why I cramped the entire time of the marathon. From 4 miles on until 19.5, I had to walk. And again, I'll go over that in my race recap. But nutrition, and the only way to figure out what works for you is to try it. Another thing I would tell you is that after just doing the race, you need to do the nutrition that they have on the race. So start eating your potato chips during it. Start eating your fruits, especially bananas. I had over 26 bananas on the course. Some of them were half, some of them were 26 bananas went down the hatch. Then you need to figure out, what goo packets sit for you. Do you like their Merton gels? Do you like Coke? Do you like Red Bull? Do you like, you should probably start training with Gatorade Endurance. You start really drinking that water back. All that stuff are things you should be training with that we didn't train with at all. We only trained with our nutrition. We trained with zero nutrition that they had. So that was a big mistake I think we all would have wished we would have done. But your nutrition's going to be huge. Next up, your mindset. Your mindset going in can be so many different things. But if you're just going to complete one and get it done, my opinion to you should be just try to finish. Just get across the finish line. It doesn't matter. Get across the finish line. It literally doesn't matter. You can get it done. I am telling you from a dude who just walked an entire marathon essentially. And yes, I did run the first 4 miles at a pretty good clip, but it was cramp, stop. And then from 4 miles on, I literally just walked. And it wasn't a fast walk. And I'm, again, going to go over that later, but you have to get in the right mindset of really the training and being there on time, especially if you're not in as good a shape as we were, because we were all in pretty good shape as far as with our bodies in tune. We weren't even close to Ironman shape, but we were in great CrossFit shape. And you've got to be willing mentally to put that up there. One of the hardest things for me mentally that I didn't do, that I couldn't do, was I didn't want my body to change. And your body's going to change. You're going to gain a lot of fat, especially if you're more of a muscular person. You're going to gain fat. I went into Ironman training at like 224 pounds. I ended my full Ironman at 217.6. This was after the Ironman at 217.6. So I really didn't gain or lose any weight, but I lost tons of muscle mass. I gained a lot of fat overall, and that was difficult to do. Another thing that you have to mentally prepare for is you're full. You're full while working out, and you're full all the time. That was one thing that was very annoying for me, is that I knew I had to keep eating, but it was very difficult to do so. Like, even in the training, you've got to be prepared to be full all the time, especially for me, someone who eats up a bunch of calories, and I burn calories like crazy. At 224 pounds, a pretty decent amount of muscle mass compared to most triathletes out there. Yeah, my caloric intake had to be massive. I'm going to go over this on the bike later, but I messed up brutally on the bike, and I'll go over that later. But you have got to dial that in. The only way to dial that in is to put you in positions that you have not been in, which are 6, 7, 8 hour plus training sessions that, in my opinion, you need to do a lot more of than we did. And not because it wasn't programmed or it was our coach's fault at all. This was our fault, not our fault, but those guys pretty much did them. It's my fault because I pretty much skipped them. That's why I was doing other stuff on the weekends, because one thing, I went into this Ironman training and said, I'm not going to change my life for it. And it cost me in the end. It was an ignorant thing to do while trying to do an Ironman and trying to place the time that I wanted to place. It was stupid. It was arrogant on my part to do those type of things. Ironman will bite you in the ass if you are arrogant. And I was arrogant, and that's why I got bit in the ass. Like a third grader, I had to freaking walk to the detention room. The detention room just happened to be 26.2 miles away. That was the problem. I was arrogant because I didn't do the training sessions that I should have done to dial this stuff in, to dial in my muscle endurance, to know when the cramping feeling happens, how to get rid of it. Don't keep pushing your bike for a sub 540 or 545 bike when you need to slow down because you ain't got nutrition. It was dumb. It was arrogant. It was ignorant on my part. And it was 100% my fault. And I deserved what I got. I deserved it 100%. Still crossed the finish line, but I deserved what I got. I was drinking the whole time. Yeah, it was dumb. It was dumb. A lot of triathletes, they don't drink anything leading up there. They're very on top of it, but I was unwilling to give those things up in my life. And the bottom line is that is why I didn't get the time I wanted. It wasn't because it was hot out. It wasn't because I wasn't this or that. It was because I was unprepared for the situation I was put in, and that was all on me. I only look at myself in the mirror for that. I got the time I deserved. It was that simple. Okay. Next up, that's your mindset. It's individualized. So if you're used to group training, you're used to having fun, used to doing this and that, like I am a team athlete. I like to be on a team. This is all individualized. And if you're doing it alone, it is even harder because you got no one to really bounce ideas off of. If you're doing it brand new, you do probably need to get a coach. I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to need to get a coach. You don't have to, but just get something to write you up your programming so you just have to follow it. Your research is going to take you down so many freaking rabbit holes that you don't have time to then try to learn how to coach yourself. It's going to be about $150 to $300 a month on a coach, whatever you choose. I brought our coach 4 athletes. It should have been 6, but 2 dropped out right away. They just didn't have the time to put in, so totally understand that. But the 4 that stuck with it, he gave us a deal because I literally brought him 4 athletes. Like, boom, here you go, 4 paying athletes. So he was very good on working with us on the price on that. Somewhere in between there, though, you're going to expect to pay a coach. Okay, so it's very individualized. You have to like doing things alone, staying in your own mindset, all of that good stuff. Here's the next thing I will get into. And then, again, guys, we're just sprinkling the infield here. I will get into all of these topics in much more detail as we move through, especially my race day videos that come out, things like that. Okay, obsession. There has to be some sort of obsession. Otherwise, you're going to end up like me, half-ass training, half-ass doing a lot of these things, skipping the long workouts, or even if it was a 7.5-hour workout, I would do 5. If it was an 8.5-hour workout, I would do 4. It would be back and forth. If it was a 3-hour workout, I would try to go really, really fast and do 2. That doesn't help your muscle endurance and getting rid of that lactate when you have to go longer for longer periods of time. That was the biggest just blunder I made on myself, is that I cut everything short trying to fit more into a window. But again, it wasn't a window that mattered because it was the time duration. If it says 9 hours, then you better get 9 hours of movement in, because that's all going to add up. And it is going to otherwise bite you in the butt. And I'm a fit freaking dude, and I'll be honest, I'm good at all this stuff. I'm just saying, I'm pretty good at all this stuff. I'm too heavy for the sport. I probably would need to lose weight and be more focused on that, but which I'm going to go over during the race day, not right now. But you do have to just realize that is another thing that you have to get through, and you're going to have to figure out, is that the obsession and the passion for it has got to be there. Is that there are people there, all of them are obsessed. I mean, the people I was talking to, I was walking, obviously, my second lap, which is of 8 miles. So there was another guy that was walking right next to me. He was on his 3rd lap, his 21st Ironman. 21st Ironman. He's qualified for Kona 5 times, from South Africa. Just a sweetheart of a guy, like the nicest dude, helping me out. He's like, dude, you're huge out here. And I was like, well, what advice do you have, man? I'm like, I'm just walking. I feel like crap. I don't feel bad. I feel like crap because I didn't listen to myself. I cramped up so bad, which is completely on me. It was on no one but myself. And he's like, honestly, dude, you need to lose 30 pounds of muscle. He's like, you are too big to think you can go this far and get this fast. He's like, you could do it, but you'd have to do a lot more training than half-fast 6 months, right? And here's the thing that was funny. He looked like the accountant down the street, Billy Bob, who just rolled out of his desk. Like, kind of like a beer belly. His legs were lean and ripped as shit, don't get me wrong. But kind of like a beer belly, really flabby up top. And he's just freaking lapping me. He's over 8 miles ahead of me. He finishes 10.5, 12 miles before I finish. Like, I mean, what? I mean, it's insane, the obsession that these people have, that they don't care about the way they look, upper body. They don't care. Everything they do is based on making that, swim easier, that bike a little bit faster or less fatiguing, I should say, and making that run a little quicker. Everything else comes second. And that was one thing that I really thought was cool about the triathletes. That kind of gets me into is I want to do just a little bit of a segment. Now, I could go on and on about this one. And should I make a whole video on this? I don't know. I might. But I just want to again, sprinkle the infield for what's to come a little bit, is the CrossFit mindset and body type versus a triathlete. Some things that I really liked about triathletes that I noticed, no one really cared about how they looked. No one really cared about their body. Everything was more performance based. That's something that I'll give the triathletes and these Ironman athletes a nod to. Everything they did was more performance based. No one cared about taking their shirt off and being ripped. No one cared. Everybody was like, man, what was your time? Did you finish? All this stuff. Like, they were more happy to see you out there. And that was one thing that I saw different from obviously my time in the CrossFit community, is that the CrossFit community is way more worried about aesthetics. But I'm telling you right now, most of the people at the big time level, they don't give a flying fuck if they qualify for the CrossFit Games. They want to qualify because they want more followers, but they don't care. They would rather be shredded abs. They would rather have perfect butt, be tanned, all this stuff. than they would about getting a better placing at the CrossFit Games. 23rd or 3rd doesn't matter to them. For the majority of the CrossFit athletes, yes, I fell into that category before. Not really as far as the aesthetics goes. That didn't really matter when I was competing. I only cared about competing. That was the only reason why we were any good. But nowadays, you don't. That's the difference between CrossFit athletes. Again, not everyone, just the ones I've noticed. Again, I've been in both things now. Is that the triathletes were also more mature. They were more mature athletes. Everybody's a little bit older. Everybody's doing it because they love it. Everybody's doing it just to stay a little bit more healthy. No one's really competing but against themselves. Like you always see people, this is my 12th one. You know, I was running with a girl that this was her 12th one and that she just enjoyed it and loved it. She was a physics department lead at Ames, Iowa. She was great to run next to, really brought up my spirits. She's like, 40 plus years old, whatever, just fucking caking past me. I'm like, dang, and she's like, you know what? Hey, this isn't going to be a PR. It's too hot, all this stuff. She's like, I'll walk and run with you for the next 6 miles till we finish. I'm like, that's awesome, So it was pretty cool. Like the community involvement with each other was just phenomenal that you really don't get in CrossFit, because everybody in CrossFit feels like it's more out to kind of like poke you. And this is just a higher community, like the top level athletes, is that you just didn't get that because it was more mature. That those type of athletes, like this would be more you would be more on par with the masters athletes in the CrossFit space than you are with the regular or the non-age group athletes in CrossFit with the triathletes. So the triathletes and the masters athletes, they probably go together. They're a little bit more mature. They understand things a little bit more. They've got kids. They've got much bigger responsibilities than looking good on Instagram and getting your butt all over the screen. So that's one thing about CrossFit and triathlon that I really liked about triathlon, is that they were really just concerned with getting their own done, helping each other out. I mean, people's bikes were breaking down. People were pulling over to help them. People were passing out left and right. People would stop and help them and, whatever they could do. And I think that was just goes to show is that the maturity level of a lot of triathletes are a lot further. And it may be just age, and maybe because they really don't follow into these like Instagram and all this stuff. And obviously some triathletes are I wouldn't say shredded, but just very skinny and lean at the top of the level. But most are just a little bit more pudgy. They don't really care about how they look. They don't really care about any of that stuff. They just want to bike, run. They want to swim, bike, and run a little faster, So I thought that was really cool and a breath of fresh air, because it was something completely different than I'm used to in the CrossFit world, that if you don't step on stage and you don't look like a figure competitor, then you're like laughed out. Like no one cares. You know what I'm saying? But also I think that there's something to be said about that's also why Matt Frazier and Justin Medeiros do dominate, is that they really don't care as much as how they look. They look shredded, they look amazing, but they're not like the most chiseled out there because they're more concerned about winning. I don't know. That is a chat for another day. It was just something on my mind that I wanted to sprinkle out there, is that I really enjoyed that about the tri community, is that it was pretty cool to see just the community level as a whole, and really worried about the sport, not focused on the individualized, body type and manner, and they really did think about other people too. So I ran into some pretty amazing people out there. I'm not gonna lie at all. All right. Kind of went over figuring out what to buy, doing it as a group. If you can get just one more person to be as dedicated as you, I can tell you right now, it's going to help you a ton. That is a big, that is something that I would say for sure is that you should get another person that would want to do it with you. It really will help you in the end. And then I do have a little bit of a question that I want to sprinkle in these Ironman in this first video here. Is Ironman itself healthy for you? I don't know. I've been asked that a lot. Like, do you feel the race? No, it's not. You're running for and doing all this stuff. It's crazy. It's a testament. I think it's going to make you mentally stronger. I think that you could argue that just like the CrossFit Games. What's more healthy? What's more not? I really don't even want to get into that because the science behind it and all this stuff. I don't enjoy the triathlete because of, yes, I'll be honest, I do want my normal body back, but I don't enjoy it because it is the most inefficient way, in my opinion, to work out. You have to work out so long and it consumes so many calories that it never actually equals out. Because you would think, oh my God, Colin, I just burned, like my Garmin said one day, 9,338 calories. 9,338 calories. And this was our long ride we did in Port Byron, which was also 95 degrees in May. But we did that, 9,000 whatever calories, 9,000 plus calories. I ate probably that day 4,000 on the bike alone. I probably had a 1,500 calorie meal the night before. I probably had close to 1,000 calorie meal before I went out there. So I'm already in this massive surplus, including drinking, before I even go and eat my meals afterwards, which I had pizza and all this other stuff, which is probably another 3,000 calories. So you're not building any muscle. You're actually losing muscle mass because you're really not strength training, and you're eating in a surplus. So there really isn't a great way to lose weight and do triathlon unless you're already pretty heavy. There's going to be a shelf life for you until you either lose as much muscle mass as possible, or in the off season when you're not needing all of this fueling to actually go on a diet and just cut weight and then adjust to your new weight. So there is something to be said about that I did not enjoy that process. I did not enjoy the process of keeping the same weight, losing all my muscle mass, and gaining a bunch of fat. Yes, I gained a shit ton of fat over this. Not that I looked terribly fat, but from where I used to be. And I may even put up pictures. You can see one here from like when I got done competing and I got like kind of shredded, versus this is kind of what I normally walked around at in the middle here, or competed in CrossFit at. And this is what I'd be like at a triathlete body type. Is just, you have to get rid of some of that muscle mass because you've got to pump so much blood and oxygen to those muscles to keep them rolling. You just don't need them. They're going to be a waste. They simply are. Like, I'm not that big of a dude. I'm probably 6 foot. I'm 224 pounds. And I looked like a giant compared to these people. Not height-wise, but the width, I looked like a giant. Like, my tri-suit didn't fit. Like, it didn't fit at all. Like, I could barely zip it up, and it was just, like, hanging off my shoulders and all this stuff, which screwed me for the swim anyways. I'll get into that during the race. But it was interesting. It was an interesting thing. So is it healthy for you? Absolutely. I love movement in any way, shape, and form. I love that people do this and they get obsessed with it. But, doing Ironman after Ironman after Ironman, that's a lot of strain on the body. It's a long time of moving. And honestly, my biggest thing was it healthy for me to eat all that food? Like, when I tell you I was full every second of every freaking day. I mean, I was full all the time, and maybe you shouldn't feel like that. Maybe you shouldn't be that full. Maybe it's just because I wasn't used to it and didn't do it long enough. There was several, and I know a decent amount about nutrition, don't get me wrong, and I don't know everything. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything, but my experience was I was full a lot, and one of the reasons why I was full all the time is because I bonked in a training session, and I said, I'm never bonking again. Like, I bonked out to the point of where I was going to pass out. Like, it was not a good feeling. And I told myself, no matter what, I'm never feeling like that again. So from that moment on, any big training session for the week, anything we had leading up, I would just eat so much food. And ask my wife, the amount of food I consumed it should have been illegal. I should have been arrested for the amount of food. Our grocery bill is like $500 a week and we would run a couple more times to the grocery store. So that's another expense I didn't even think about, but the amount of increase in food you're going to take up, because you're also hungrier because you're working out longer, but you're eating while you're working out, and then you come home and smash all the food in the world. So again, it's not the body type that I would want to do. I like my aesthetics too much. I work too hard on it to get it to really want to go to the level of losing most of that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to make that decision when you do it and be okay with it for however long you need to train for. Again, ours was, I honestly probably got serious, and I don't even know how serious it was, but probably about January is when I stopped. Put it this way, January is when I stopped deadlifting, I stopped squatting, I stopped doing most WODs. I still did about 1 or 2 a week. If they're really good hard wads, I would do them. And then if it wouldn't make me too sore, I would do the wad. And there was days where there was a run and I was like, I'm not doing the run, I'll skip it. I won't do this hour-and-a-half run, I'll do a wad, which was 20-minute EMOM or something, you know. So I will say you'll have to make the decisions that you want to make, and maybe you don't even CrossFit, so it doesn't matter to you. You're just couch to Ironman type of mindset, where then you should probably do a couple races and things, and maybe even a year or longer of training to really figure out what works for you. All right, that was a lot. That was a lot. That was more than I wanted to go over. This has been 40 minutes or so. But yeah, that's pretty much sprinkling the infield. So what I've got planned for the next couple videos are my race day and how it went, what my training was actually like really to go over training, but and exactly how it went, but my race day, how it went, the end of the night, how I feel now, which I'm 2 days out from it right now, how I felt yesterday, just after, and all that stuff. There's a whole list of things that I've got to go over with that. Video 3 is going to be training and what it's actually like, because I want to get my race video out as soon as possible, because I'm still feeling all those kind of endorphins and all those things that I want to get out to you as soon as possible. So I'll probably film that either later today or tomorrow, then get that out. I'm going to try to get these out as quick as possible. Again, I'm not editing anything. I might make a thumbnail. That'd be about it, and just change it from part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The last part is going to be part 4, and it's going to be my biggest struggle. So video number 1 is what I just did, what you're listening to now, sprinkling the infield. Video 2 is my race and how it went. That's probably going to be a long one, but each of these are going to be probably between 40 minutes and an hour. And then the third video is going to be training, the volume, the skipping workouts, just really diving in deep to the training way more than I just did in this video. The last one's going to be my biggest struggles and my biggest issues with Ironman and the things that I struggled with the most. The 5th video will be with everybody else, and we'll just have a podcast, have a couple beers, and at least give you guys perspectives of people from different age groups, because all 4 of us were in a different age group. 30 to 35 was me. Chris was 35 to 39. Danny was 40 to 44, and I think Gary was 50 to 54, because you age group up one age. So it said like I was 32 and I'm only 31. You age group up an age. So, all right. That's video 1. That is sprinkling the infield of what it's going to take to become an Ironman. Very little detail, but this could be a 5-hour session, so I'm going to break it up. Next one, which will come out probably tomorrow, is going to be my race day and how it all went down actually on race day and what happened during the race. And I'm going to break it all down for you then and how I felt after the race. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys listening, and yeah, I'm out. Peace.